Hi there guys, welcome back to another episode of XL Garage. So I wanted to call this episode the wiring episode part 2, but I'm not too sure if wiring's all we're going to be doing. I think it's just going to be a bit of everything. Getting the car kind of wrapped up and perhaps, fingers crossed, even starting it. There's quite a lot to do before that though, so stay tuned because that'll probably be towards the end of the episode. But I really want to start off with, like I said, getting the engine tied up. We've got things to do like fit the inlet manifold, got to finish off the alternator cabling, I need to correct some of the throttle cabling because I made a mistake in my last episode. I need to fit the radiator, make the radiator pipes, fill it all with fluids. I need to fill the gearbox with fluids. I need to bleed the brakes because currently there's no brakes. I need to bleed the clutch, but I might need to redo the reservoir to clutch master line because I think it's getting snagged somewhere and it's not getting fluid. So there's tons to do, that's for sure. I think I'm gonna have a friend come around to help me. Obviously, you need help fitting the bonnet, need help bleeding things. It's usually a bit of a two-man job, or it's a lot easier with two people, that's for sure. So really, I mean, let's just dive into it. I think we'll start off with getting the inlet manifold on. That way the engine's kind of done, and that's very exciting. I think we'll move on to some of the wiring bits, getting the radiator on. I'll show you as we go through. So let's hop into it. Right, so to bring you guys up to speed, if you haven't been following along so far. So this is a 2013 Toyota GT86. It's got big old wide body kit that I fitted a few years ago. There's a front bumper, arches are all up there, wide wheels, airbag suspension, and to go along with all that show, we're now giving it the go. That's in the form of a GM Chevrolet LS3, 6.2 litres, hoping for around 470 at the firewheel, something like that, which is more than enough for the chassis. In fact, it's absolutely loads, perhaps too much, but oh well, here we are. But you can never have too much of a good thing after all, can you? So anyway, so we're at the stage now where we're going to start giving it some beeps and boops on the computer to bring the ECU to life. Start setting up all the inputs and outputs and things like that. If you have been following along, I'm at the stage now where I've got the clutch master in. You probably cannot see it, but it's just there. And that's got a banjo bolt coming to an AN line, which is in that P-clamp there, goes up, disappears down there, joins up to the clutch line. That was a really big challenge because being right-hand drive, of course, the clutch master's here, and this is the head that's offset on the LS. So it's just crazy close. You can see how close it is to the firewall. It's mad. Here's my heater lines, which are probably going to die one day from rubbing or something like that. But these are all little things that I'm going to cross when I come to them. Obviously I need to get the car running first and then kind of work out the little things that need to be readdressed. So as is the case of doing something like this. Got a couple of last things before I can actually get the car running. I need to extend the alternator cable to the alternator. I need to get the radiator on, get the radiator hoses done. Those are going to wait for now. But I have all the wiring in. Here's some of it still to be plugged in. Some here. It's looking like a bit of a mess. Thankfully inside that's not the case. Well, I say that. It's quite a mess in here. But thankfully inside here I have the Haltech Elite 2500 mounted up there. It's fuse box and wideband sensor down there. Got my gearbox is all in and that's all lined up. So obviously I need to put the interior back together, but I can start giving it some beeps and boops before that. But what I'm going to do now before I do that is get the final piece of the puzzle, which is the inlet manifold on. That allows me to plug in injectors, coil packs, map sensor, throttle body, things like that, so I can actually calibrate the throttle body and so on. Obviously I'm not going to start the car now by any stretch of the imagination. Still going to fill it with fluid, still going to do all the cooling stuff. I don't really want to run it without the cooling system because then it really cuts down my initial start time. And I'd like it to get warm, like to find any issues during that first start. But here we go, let's get you on there and then let's start playing around with some things. Right, so now that I've got the inlet manifold bolted down, obviously the engine is basically complete. Very exciting. Clutch reservoir's up there. Might need to redo that line, but I'm going to see how it goes when I try to bleed it with a friend of mine. Got a few other bits done. Got the alternator cable done down here. Just run it through that little frame rail because obviously it keeps it nice and safe. Just need to give it some sheathing up there to protect those wires. Got a new battery as that's very much needed, but currently it's charging. I think now it's literally just time to start filling it with fluids, as well as, like I said, I've still got to do the throttle cable inside the car. Still got to do that. Means I've got to tear apart some of the interior again, so I'll do all that off camera. But like I say, fluid time. So I'm going to put the radiator on soon, but before that, I'm going to start filling the gearbox with gearbox fluid. These T56s are a bit funny. They use automatic transmission fluid. So I need to pump that into the gearbox. Obviously I'm going to be on my back. I can't lift that bottle over the gearbox, so I'm going to have to use one of these little pumps. Apparently they're not amazing, but it's the only way I can really see to do it. They're cheap. Obviously if you're like a professional mechanic, you have a great big pneumatic pump and it does it easily. But I'm just going to get a workout on by filling 3.5 litres of this through that. So wish me luck, because I'm going under. Right, so obviously got a few more things back together. Got the radiator and the air conditioning condenser on. Just there because they're going to be there eventually. I just don't think I'm going to do the air conditioning lines before I get the car running. I think obviously it's coming up to winter. I'm just not fussed about that. Had to cut a few corners with the radiator hoses. Ordered some nice new silicone hoses. That's a steam port vent, 90, 90, and then a joiner. Problem is I bought a joiner that was too short, as you can see. So I cut it down the middle, joined it up even further. It's all very temporary. There's no beading like here. And as you can see, I don't have any Jubilee clips. But it's holding fluid. Probably won't hold fluid for long once the water pump starts going. But I mostly just wanted to get a bit of coolant flowing around the engine so I can start it and keep it running for a little bit longer. Plus, I want to flush out the coolant in the engine because when I was rebuilding it, it's probably got gunk and, oily residue and stuff in the cooling passages. The radiator sat for a while. It had a load of crap in it. Hopefully I'm going to drop the guts of all the coolant soon anyway. So may as well just, may as well run it like that. I've ordered a new joiner and some Jubilee clips to finish all that off. Had to redo the throttle pedal cabling. I've now pulled it all the way through to here. I essentially got the 5 volts and the app signals wrong way around, so that's all sorted. Got the gearbox filled with oil, so that's all good. I can now obviously run that. I think now really it's going to be bleeding the brakes because no brakes currently. I'm going to get some of the interior put back together. I'm going to get the bonnet on because when it gets trailered to get the exhaust made, if it pours down in rain, obviously I don't want all of this to get wet. And then I need to bleed the clutch. I'm not too confident in it. I'm not sure why, but it's just not building pressure whatsoever. So I don't know if it's pulling in air from somewhere, if there's a fitting that's loose, or if the helper spring that's on the clutch pedal's not helping, or if because I didn't bench bleed the master cylinder, it's screwed. I don't know. Hopefully I can get it working. That would be really important, but we'll see how it goes. As you can tell, the elephant in the room I'm skirting around is now it's just a case of filling it with oil and trying to start it. So I think that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to get some help. So I'm just going to stick you guys up on a tripod somewhere while we work away. Obviously, I need to fill it with oil. Got some special running oil for that. Need to disable the injectors, crank the engine over, hopefully make sure it builds oil pressure, and then just give it a start. I'm not going to be talking to you guys while we're doing it. If it does start, we just start checking for leaks. We need to have a fire extinguisher on hand in case there's a fuel leak. Yeah, fingers crossed. All fingers crossed. Let's see how it goes. I'm a little bit scared. Right, here we go guys, another pre-start update for you because things aren't going quite as well as I'd hoped them to be going. So the car's on the ground, just looking a bit weird. But essentially having 2 major issues. The first is that I can't trigger the starter the way I'd like to so far. Got a solution in mind for it, but this is where my knowledge of electrics and electrical circuits and things like that just isn't up to scratch. I'm trying to use the original CAN bus start switch to trigger the starter, which is a bit like witchcraft. The solution I'm thinking of might not be correct. Like I said, this is where the lack of knowledge goes through, is to have a kind of 12 volt constant to the starter motor with a relay in the middle, and then have that relay triggered by the ECU. Hopefully, fingers crossed that works. But I have had the engine turning over, building a little bit of oil pressure, so that's good. I know it works. I know the starter works. I know the engine turns over. I know it builds oil pressure. Everything works. So once we get the starter button working, hopefully it'll just be a case of plugging back in the coil packs, turning on the injectors, and giving it a start. So hopefully that's what you'll see next. But the other issue that I've been having is getting the clutch to bleed. That's been a real nightmare. At first, I was really scared. I was worried I'd have to take the gearbox off because I'd installed the release bearing incorrectly, but I've been assured that I haven't, and it looks okay. Clutch looks okay. Everything looks okay. It's just not bleeding. There's no leaks. Fluid isn't coming out of places it shouldn't do. You press the pedal, nothing happens. You pump the pedal, no pressure builds, and then you release the bleeder and a little bit of fluid comes out. No major bubbles. So it just feels like there's a really big air bubble trap somewhere. And it might be in the master cylinder where it's mounted upside down. I think I'm just gonna have to keep toiling away at it, trying to get that thing to bleed. Little tools and tricks I can try, but it's looking a little bit bleak at the moment, I have to admit. Fingers crossed again, I can get that bled, and that means at least we can, of course, drive it out of here. We can move it back and forwards a little bit, things like that. But that's where we are. So at the moment, it all looks a little bit bleak. Hopefully at least I can get the starter thing sorted, and then you'll hear this thing fire up, and fingers crossed I can get the clutch bled as well. So there we are. There's a little doomsday update for you guys. I think I'm going to jump back into it, just keep cracking away, and hopefully in the next clip you'll see it'll be something interesting. Let's dive into that. Alright guys, here it is. I've got the clutch bled, I've hopefully got the starter working. It's time to turn the injectors on and try and give it a first start. Say I'm scared is an understatement. Just give it a go. this. Oh my god. Let's fucking go! Oh my god. You can't even begin to comprehend how relieved I am to hear that finally run. And run properly. I'm at a loss for words. I mean, compared to probably some of the footage you saw a few minutes ago, this is 2-3 weeks on now, battling all kinds of issues. A lot of it all tuning related in the end. I can't even begin to explain how many steps down the line we are now. Map sensor wiring is wrong, had to redo that. Core pack answers the wrong way around, silly mistake. Got a timing light on it. Timing was all good actually, surprisingly. Not entirely sure on the fuel pressure. I've bought a few bits now to plumb the fuel pressure sensor into the ECU, so the ECU knows exactly how much it is. Kind of just took an assumption, going off information I saw online, that the PSI of the fuel should be good enough for the LS, but you know what they say about assumptions. So I'm going to work out that for sure. But in the end, the silver bullet was getting the logs over to Howtech in Australia. Unfortunately, time differences mean that you can't do like a cool remote session with them when you're in the UK. And they looked at it and they just bumped up the idle control. I mean, I've learned so much about the Howtech Elite ECU over the last couple of weeks. Still loads I don't know, but just what little features and functions do, it's been really good to learn. But I guess the idle control, it's a percentage between like 10 and 30%, and it probably just tells the ECU, here you can use X amount of throttle to reach your target idle. Obviously 10% being the default didn't quite cut it. Maybe that's due to the big cam. I don't know. But as you heard, it was just idling for a good 3 minutes and then eventually cut itself out. Again, I'm not sure why that might have been. It might have got to the end of the post-start map and then just it wasn't keeping itself up. So might just need to bump that up. And one tiny thing I'm worried about is the oil pressure. The oil pressure wasn't getting particularly high. When I was cranking it a few weeks ago, it was getting to about 9 PSI, which I just figured is probably normal given doing it on the starter motor. Got it started, got to 15 PSI, and then as it got warmer over those 3 minutes, it started to drop down to 10. It could entirely mean that my oil pressure sensor scaling is wrong, in that, to explain it briefly, you know, at 0.5 volts it reads 0 PSI, and at 4.5 volts it reads 100 PSI. And so therefore 2.5 volts is 50 PSI and so on. It could be that that's all wrong, and that the sensor is actually like a 30 PSI sensor, not a 100 PSI sensor or 130 PSI sensor. And therefore, you know, 1 volt isn't going to be 15 PSI, it's actually going to be 40 or so. Anyway, whatever, I'm really glad I finally got it sorted. I didn't want to end this video with just, you know, failure to start it, sending the car off to have its exhaust made, because that's the next step essentially. This weekend it's going off, getting a guy with a truck to come along and collect it and ship it down to a fabricator nearby, and they're going to make me a full custom exhaust. It's not going to be cheap, but it needs to be done. Obviously you heard it, it's an absolute monster with its noise. That's just open headers, so there's a lot to be done there. There's loads of other things they do ECU wise as well, like it's not even got any O2 or lambda control yet because there's no O2 sensors, because there's no exhaust to put them in. So all of these things can be kind of ironed out and it can really be made drivable. I don't think it'd be very drivable as it is. It can really be made drivable. I don't even have an air filter on the thing. There's a lot to be done, but I'm glad I was able to end the episode on a good note. So there we go. Hopefully your ears aren't bleeding. Feel like mine might start at any moment, but trust me, it's been a lot of stress, a lot of heartache. Yeah, I'm glad we finally got here. So that's where I'm going to end today's episode. Needless to say, I think I need to just go have a victory drink or something. But there we have it. So all that YouTube stuff, you know the deal. Give a video a like, leave a comment, do your best impression of that, and subscribe to the channel so you can see it through to the end. Exhaust, MOT, driving it, taking it out to various meets and shows and so on, and do all that good stuff. And there we go. I haven't got the energy to finish off. I'm just smiling too hard. I'll catch you next time. Cheers. Bye for now.